Thank you very much. I'm Ted Green with Green Public Affairs and Campaigns.
Sure.
Going forward, what do you see as the timing for the courts to resolve the issue, if it's a tax or a fee?
Oh, it'll probably be, I would say, that by the end of this year. Yeah. And who knows, it may get appealed from there. I mean, when you have billions at stake here, let's say, for example, it was overturned, declared to be a tax. There would certainly be a strong incentive for the state government to say, wait a minute, that's not right.
Gary Sedlick, California Business Ventures. Dennis, could you comment, without going into all the legal elements, but in terms of this nexus issue, the Sinclair paint in particular, if the ARB was to come up with new criteria in terms of what was more closely aligned as a nexus between two emission reduction, would that in fact reduce some of this political tension, or do you believe that regardless of how close they align with expenditures related to emission reduction, that it would still be a controversial issue?
Well, as a tautology, if you assume that they can make it align with Sinclair, then they're probably in a better shape. But the really issue is, what is the nature of the Sinclair test? And the idea of a difference between a tax and a fee, the idea of a fee was that somehow the payer of the fee is somewhat related to the benefit or the cost of the service being provided that he's paying for. And what's happening here is that the fee is being paid for the privilege of being allowed to stay in business. And that'd be one position. And so the nature of Sinclair and the factual situation that it covered doesn't appear to be quite cover our situation. And so it's difficult for me to perceive how the ARB could say, well, we're taking billions from these set of businessmen and they're getting the benefit of it in a kind of a fee nature in the way Sinclair would decide. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Sinclair is controlling, at least from ARB standpoint. So put it this way, California Chamber of Commerce has taken the position Sinclair is controlling. I suspect the ARB is not taking that position.
My name is Jack Humperville. I'm with the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. Is there any litigation on the allocation of the money, 25% to high-speed rail, 40% or whatever it is to affordable housing? So are people contesting how that dough is being spread around?
I am not aware of any litigation contesting that, but I can assure you there is plenty of lobbying.
Can you just go into a little more detail about the actual mechanism of the auction and how the pricing is set to raise the $2.2 billion?
Well, that's kind of a complex topic. But the idea here was that ARB has set a floor price originally of $10 per metric ton, increasing by 5%. And then what happens here is in the first compliance period and now in the new compliance period, there was a kind of a 90% allocation. I'll put the utilities aside. They're in a different mechanism. But the idea would be that, gee whiz, you have a 90% free allocation that you don't have to pay for. But if you need more than your 90% at the auction, you need now to buy additional rights to pollute or emit greenhouse gases. And as it turns out that we've been having these quarterly auctions, and what happens here is at the end of your compliance period, you have to show you have enough allocations looking backwards for the amount of greenhouse gases you've actually emitted, and then there's a third-party validation on your number and so forth. So what happens is it's what's called in this auction process, people will put in some money, make a bid, sealed bid, one time. And I'm going to steal some language from somebody I heard because I think it was pretty effective. If you really want to make sure you get an allocation, you bid high. You might say 15. And then other people put some bids in. They start going down. They say, okay, so this person that bid 15, whatever a metric ton, $15 a metric ton, he gets his. You start going down the list until you get to the lowest price, and then the allocations are used up. Everybody below that point doesn't get any allocations, and the purchase is at the lowest price for everybody. So that's kind of how it works. And there's been, by now there's been numerous of these auctions. We had one just recently in May, and it's raising a lot of money. Now, the point of all of this, the theory here is that this will encourage industrial users to either be more efficient because they're going to be ratcheted down as time goes on. And so in order not to have to buy as many allocations, hopefully get better equipment and so forth and so on, maybe potentially even have to go out of business if you just can't make it work. But that's the idea here, is to try and have the marketplace relegate, how greenhouse gas emissions should be generated, but at a lower level. And it costs you money to stay where you are.
Sorry, I'm Holly Shorter with Santa Cruz Valley Economic Development Corporation. So over the multiple quarterly auctions that they've had, how is the price adjusted in each auction?
Well, actually, it hasn't been, that much above the $10. But you can see from the billions, you're talking about real dollars for the businesses that are involved here.
Robert Mance, Board Mance Capital Advisors. So now the money as a source has come in and it's going into affordable housing. Is it actually being distributed into affordable housing in some method or mechanism? Can you explain that?
That I am not familiar with.
We'll get into that in the next presentation.
The actual details of that. But the governor is budgeting it for affordable housing. And of course, I'm not an affordable housing person, but they would be very familiar with, well, how do you get your share of the $400 million, and how do you qualify, and so forth and so on.
Yes. Thank you, Dennis. We'll get into the affordable housing question and some other funding issues in our next presentation.
Well, I thank your audience. You had to get up early to get here.